Marcus Delgado had not eaten anything since the coffee he'd forced down at 6 that morning. He had been at his desk since well before sunrise, the specific, grinding exhaustion of a man managing a crisis that had, across the preceding 2 weeks, consumed nearly every waking hour. A critical supplier failure threatening his water technology company's most significant contract. A problem he had been working, personally, and with increasing desperation, to solve before the specific deadline that would determine whether the contract survived at all. He had not slept more than 4 hours in any of the preceding 6 nights. He had not, if he was entirely honest with himself, eaten a proper meal in considerably longer than that, subsisting on coffee and the occasional handful of whatever happened to be within reach of his desk. He had not noticed, across those 2 weeks, that he was being watched. Sophia, 4 years old, the daughter of his housekeeper, Valentina, had noticed considerably more than Marcus realized. She had watched him grow thinner across the preceding 2 weeks, his usual energy replaced by a specific, heavy quiet that had settled over the house's daily rhythm, the particular exhaustion visible even to a 4-year-old's limited but genuine attentiveness. She had brought the small lunchbox to his study on a Thursday afternoon, setting it carefully on the corner of his desk with the particular solemn ceremony of a child delivering something she considered significant. "I made you lunch," she said. "Mama helped me pack it, but I chose everything myself." Marcus had looked up from his laptop, genuinely surprised, and had felt, for the first time in weeks, something in his chest loosen slightly at the specific, uncomplicated kindness of the gesture. "You didn't have to do that, Sophia," he said, though he had reached for the small box with genuine interest. "You've been sad," Sophia said simply, watching him open it. "I don't know why, but you look tired all the time now, and you don't eat lunch anymore, and I thought maybe you needed someone to help." Marcus had opened the lunchbox to find, arranged with careful, deliberate attention, a sandwich cut into the shape of a star, a single chocolate chip cookie that appeared, on closer inspection, to have a small bite already taken from one edge, a folded piece of paper, and a smooth, flat river stone. "The sandwich is a star because sad food makes you sadder," Sophia explained, watching him examine each item. "So I made it fun instead. The cookie is my favorite one, from my own snack, because I wanted you to have something that was actually mine, not just something new. I know I already took a bite. I'm sorry. I forgot and ate a little before I remembered it was for you." Marcus had unfolded the piece of paper to find a drawing. Himself, rendered in the specific enthusiastic imprecision of a 4-year-old's artistic ambition, wearing an unmistakable, wide smile. "That's you smiling," Sophia said. "In case you forget what it looks like, since you haven't done it in a while." Marcus had felt his eyes burn, the specific overwhelming weight of 2 exhausting weeks finally finding release in a way that had nothing to do with the crisis he had been managing, and everything to do with the small, imperfect, entirely sincere collection of items a 4-year-old had assembled for him. "And the stone," Sophia added, watching his face carefully, "is for luck. I found it in the garden. I thought you might need some." "Hey, welcome back, everyone. I am so glad you are here. This is the place for stories about the small acts of noticing that arrive exactly when we need them most, from people we never expect to be paying such close attention." Before we begin, I want to know, where in the world are you watching from right now? Drop your city and country in the comments. I read every single one. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do it right now, because today's story is tender and simple, and it will remind you what genuine kindness actually looks like. Stay until the very end. Let's begin. Albuquerque carries the specific layered character of the American Southwest, its considerable history stretching back centuries before American statehood, its wealth built across a particular combination of railroad commerce, later technology and research industries clustered around the city's significant national laboratory presence, and the enduring, deep-rooted culture of the region's Hispanic and indigenous communities, all woven together into a city whose particular light and landscape felt considerably different from anywhere else Marcus had lived. Marcus Delgado's estate sat in the city's North Valley, a large adobe-style home built in the 1980s on land his family had held for generations. His company, a water technology firm addressing the Southwest's considerable and growing water scarcity challenges, having grown, across 15 years, into one of the region's most significant clean technology enterprises. Her name was Valentina Reyes, 32 years old, born in Albuquerque to a family with deep roots in New Mexico stretching back generations. Her father working in construction across the city's considerable ongoing development. Her mother teaching elementary school for over 2 decades. The two of them building, across careful and consistent work, a specific stability they had instilled deeply in Valentina. She had studied early childhood education at the University of New Mexico, had taught preschool for several years before her own divorce had led her toward the more flexible, financially necessary work of private household management. She had been managing Marcus Delgado's household for just over a year. Her daughter Sofia came with her most days. Sofia was 4 years old. She had her mother's watchful eyes and a specific, developed attentiveness to the emotional temperature of the households she moved through, an attentiveness Valentina had noticed developing since her own difficult divorce, when Sofia, at 2 years old, had apparently absorbed considerably more of her parents' tension than either adult had fully realized at the time. She had watched Marcus, across the preceding 2 weeks, with the particular quiet observation she brought to most adults she encountered regularly, noticing the specific accumulation of exhaustion that had settled over him, the missed meals, the increasingly heavy quiet, the particular quality of a man carrying something he had not shared with anyone in the house. She had not understood, at 4 years old, anything about the specific business crisis Marcus was managing. She had understood, with the particular instinctive clarity children sometimes possess, only that something was wrong, and that the wrongness had a shape she recognized, having watched her own mother carry similar exhaustion through the difficult months of the divorce. Hit that like button right now because a 4-year-old just spent 2 weeks quietly noticing exhaustion that everyone else in a household of adults had somehow missed, and decided, entirely on her own, that she needed to do something about it. Subscribe right now because what she packed into that lunchbox is going to stay with you. Let's keep going. Valentina had found Marcus still sitting at his desk 20 minutes later, the lunchbox's contents arranged carefully in front of him, the drawing propped against his laptop where he could see it, the specific, unmistakable evidence of a man who had been crying, visible in his reddened eyes. "Mr. Delgado," she said, concerned. "Is everything all right? Sofia mentioned she'd brought you lunch. I hope she didn't do anything wrong," Marcus said, his voice unsteady. "Valentina, I need to ask you something. Has it been obvious? The past 2 weeks. Has it been obvious to everyone in this house that I've been struggling, even though I haven't said anything to anyone about it?" Valentina had considered the question carefully, the specific caution of an employee deciding how much honesty a difficult question genuinely invited. "I've noticed," she admitted. "You've seemed exhausted, and you haven't been eating properly. I assumed it was business-related and that it wasn't my place to ask." "It was," Marcus confirmed. "A critical contract, a supplier failure, considerably more pressure than I've managed well over the preceding 2 weeks. I hadn't realized I was letting it show this visibly. I certainly hadn't realized Sofia had been paying close enough attention to notice." "She notices everything," Valentina said. "She always has. I sometimes worry it's an unusual amount of attention for someone her age to be paying to the people around her. I think, today, I'm considerably more grateful for that particular quality than worried about it," Marcus said. He had looked at the small lunchbox again, at the half-eaten cookie, the star-shaped sandwich, the drawing of himself smiling, the smooth garden stone. "Can you help me understand something?" he said. "Why did she choose these specific items? I understand the general kindness of it, but I'm curious about her specific reasoning, if she shared any of it with you while you were helping her pack it." Valentina had smiled, the particular warm recollection of watching her daughter work through the decision. "She thought about it for a long time," she said. "She asked me what people needed when they were sad, and I told her that different people needed different things, but that food and kindness usually helped a little. She decided on the sandwich shape because she said sad food makes you sadder, which I think might be one of the wisest things I've heard her say. The cookie was entirely her own idea. She specifically wanted to give you something that was already hers, rather than something new, because she said it would mean more that way." "It did," Marcus said quietly. "The drawing took her considerable time," Valentina continued. "She wanted to make sure she captured your smile correctly, and she asked me several times whether it looked right. And the stone, she found that in the garden last week and had been keeping it in her pocket. She told me this morning she'd decided you needed it more than she did. Share this story right now with someone who needs it today. Because a 4-year-old spent real thought and real sacrifice on every single item in that lunchbox. Her own cookie, her own lucky stone, considerable time perfecting a drawing, simply because she noticed someone was struggling and decided, with the only resources available to her, to help. One tap. Send this to someone who needs to be reminded that the smallest gestures, given with genuine intention, carry enormous weight. Let's keep going." Marcus had found Sofia in the kitchen later that afternoon, still processing the specific, considerable weight of what her small lunchbox had communicated, and had sat down across from her at the small table where she was working on another drawing. "Sofia," he said, "thank you. I don't think I've properly said that yet. What you did today mattered more than I know how to fully explain to you." Sofia had looked up from her drawing with mild, pleased interest. "Did the star sandwich help?" she asked. "I wasn't sure if the shape actually mattered, or if I was just imagining that it would." "Everything helped," Marcus said. "The sandwich, the cookie, the drawing, the stone, all of it. Together. I want you to know that I ate every bite, and I've kept the drawing propped against my computer, and I'm carrying the stone in my pocket right now." Sofia had processed this with visible satisfaction. "Are you still sad?" she asked directly. Marcus had considered the question honestly. "I still have a difficult problem to solve at work," he said. "That part hasn't gone away yet. But I think I feel considerably less alone in carrying it than I did this morning, and I think that's largely because of you." "Good," Sofia said, with the particular matter-of-fact satisfaction of a 4-year-old who had accomplished exactly what she'd set out to accomplish. "You should eat lunch every day, even when you're busy. I can help remind you, if you want." "I would like that very much," Marcus said. He had, in the days that followed, found himself thinking considerably more than he expected about the specific quality of what Sofia had offered him. Not simply the food itself, though the meal had mattered in the immediate, practical sense of a man who had genuinely been neglecting basic care during a difficult stretch, but the particular, uncomplicated generosity of a child who had noticed his exhaustion without being told anything about its cause, and had responded with everything she genuinely had available to offer, holding nothing back, sacrificing her own cookie and her own lucky stone without any hesitation about whether the gesture was proportionate or appropriate. He had resolved the supplier crisis within the following week, the specific solution arriving through a combination of careful negotiation and, he privately acknowledged, a clearer head than he had been bringing to the problem across the exhausted, poorly fed fortnight preceding Sofia's intervention. He had also, in the weeks that followed, made a specific, deliberate change to his own daily habits, a genuine commitment to actually eating lunch regardless of how demanding his schedule became, a change Sophia had, true to her offer, taken to reminding him about with considerable consistency whenever she was present at the estate. "Did you eat lunch today?" she would ask, most afternoons, with the particular serious follow-through of someone who considered this question part of her genuine responsibility now. "I did," Marcus would confirm, more often than not entirely truthfully. "Thank you for checking." Right here, a man who had been running himself into the ground for 2 weeks finally slowed down, not because a board member intervened, not because a doctor warned him, but because a 4-year-old noticed he looked sad and decided, with everything she had, to help. Share this right now with someone who needs to be reminded that noticing someone's exhaustion and doing something small about it matters more than we often realize. Subscribe because we're almost at the end. Let's finish it. Marcus had, several weeks later, given Sophia a small gift of his own. Not anything extravagant, understanding, with the particular clarity her own gesture had provided, that the value of what she'd given him had never been about scale or expense. He had given her a small, polished wooden box, considerably nicer than her own lunchbox but modest by any reasonable measure, along with a note he had written himself, thanking her specifically for each item she had chosen, and explaining, in language he hoped a 4-year-old could understand, exactly why each one had mattered so much. "I want you to have somewhere special to keep things you find," he told her, presenting the box. "Stones or anything else you decide someone needs someday. I think you have a gift for knowing exactly what people need, even when they haven't told you what's wrong." Sophia had examined the box with considerable pleasure, opening and closing its small latch several times with evident satisfaction. "I'll use it for lucky stones," she said, "in case you need another one someday, or anybody else who looks sad." "I think that's an excellent plan," Marcus said. There is a particular kind of noticing that exists without any specific understanding of what's actually wrong. The specific, uncomplicated attentiveness of a child who cannot name a business crisis, or a supplier failure, or a critical deadline, but who recognizes, with total clarity, the shape of exhaustion and sadness in someone she cares about, and responds with whatever genuine resources she has available. Sophia had not understood, at 4 years old, anything about the specific crisis consuming Marcus Delgado's attention across 2 exhausting weeks. She had understood only that he looked tired and sad and had stopped eating lunch, and had decided, with the particular resourceful generosity of a young child, that she could help, using the only currency genuinely available to her, her own cookie, her own lucky stone, considerable careful effort spent perfecting a drawing of his smile. In case you forget what it looks like, since you haven't done it in a while. A 4-year-old's simple, devastating observation delivered alongside a small lunchbox containing everything she genuinely had to offer that broke through 2 weeks of accumulated exhaustion more completely than any board meeting, any negotiation, any of the considerable professional resources available to a man managing a genuine business crisis. Sometimes the most profound comfort arrives not through sophisticated intervention, but through the simple, uncomplicated generosity of someone who noticed we were struggling and gave us everything they genuinely had, without ever calculating whether it was enough. If today's story moved you, please hit that like button right now. It costs you 1 second, and it sends this to someone who needs it today. Subscribe, because there are more stories coming, more small acts of noticing that arrive exactly when they're needed most, more reminders that genuine kindness rarely requires grand gestures. Share this today with someone who might be struggling quietly, in case today is the day someone small enough to notice decides to help. And I will see you in the next one.